Okay, we're recording and I can see all of you. That's great. All right. Yay, my name's Amy. How are you? You want to guys introduce yourself to each other?
I'm Brian.
I'm Maria.
I'm Eric.
Okay, great. You guys have the clues, you have an instruction sheet, and then you have the answer sheet. And I'm going to read to you the instructions and you could follow along with me. Today's date is April 15th, 2015, and the time is 11 a.m. Thank you for your participation. You will participate in this task as a team, and I'll be recording the session. I will first hand out the instruction sheet and the envelope to each of you, which I did, as well as the team answer sheet, which I did. And please don't look inside your envelopes yet. As I read the instructions, please look at your instruction sheet and follow along with me. You and your two teammates will solve a written murder mystery using the clues provided. Please don't look at your clues yet. Wait until I read the instructions to take a look at your clues. After the instructions, you will be given 5 minutes to read the clues quietly to yourself. When prompted, you may begin to discuss the mystery, your clues, and your ideas in order to reach a consensus-driven solution. The session will continue until you believe you have the correct answers as a team. When you believe you have the correct answers as a team, please write down what you believe is the murderer, the weapon, what was used, and the time of the murder, the place of the murder, and the motive for the murder. There is only one correct response for each of the 5 parts of the solution. A sheet of paper and pencil have been provided for you so you can write down your team's answers. When finished, submit the sheet of paper with your team's answers to me, Amy, your proctor. Your team must come to a consensus on each of the 5 parts of the solution. You may not turn in any solution or part of the solution without the rest of the team agreeing upon it. Here are the rules. Once prompted to, during the first 5 minutes, read your clues in silence. Okay, so you're going to read your clues in silence for 5 minutes. I'll time it. And do not share any information with your other team members yet. Do not exchange your clues with your teammates. For example, you are not allowed to hand over your clues to the other person or show your clues to your teammate. You're not allowed to walk around the table or switch seats in order to see each other's clues. The only way to share the information about your clues is through verbal discussions with your group. So participants cannot rewrite other people's clues. The clues must only be communicated verbally. Do not look at other people's clues. After the first 5 minutes is up, I'm going to prompt you to begin your discussion. If you have a question, just raise your hand and ask me. And before we begin, do you have any questions? All right, so let's begin. I'm going to time the 5 minutes and just read your clues.
How much time is left?
10 seconds? Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so sorry.
No, they're all just like staring at
Oh, you are? I'm so sorry. Okay, so, begin.
Okay. How do we want to do this? As far as, do we want to just like profile each individual?
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
So we can. Okay, so I know Miss Smith. I don't know if you guys have anything on Miss Smith. Miss Smith was often associated with Mr. Kelly, who was the one that was killed. Mr. Kelly and Miss Smith were often seen together. His body was found at 1:30 in the morning, which he had been dead for an hour, which is exactly like an hour prior to that was when the elevator man got off duty. And the elevator is the one that
At 12:25 a.m.
At 12:30 a.m. is what I have.
And the elevator man saw him at 12:25 bleeding.
Really? Okay.
Wait, the elevator, going to Mr. Scott's room at 12:25.
Says that Mr. Jones shot an intruder at his apartment building at 12 midnight.
And Mr. Jones had told Mr. Kelly that he was going to kill him. And Mr. Kelly, because Mr. Kelly destroyed his business.
Mr. Kelly's destroyed
Mr. Jones's.
Mr. Jones's business. And Mr. Jones
Told Mr. Kelly that he was going to kill him.
Okay.
And then there was blood found outside Mr. Jones' apartment.
Okay.
And the knife with Mr. Kelly's blood was found in Miss Smith's yard.
Yeah, I have that as well. And it says that the knife though has Mr. Scott's fingerprints on it.
Because he was in Mr. Scott's room at 12:25.
Okay.
And there was blood stains in Mr. Scott's car.
Okay. So. Okay, let's think about this.
Yeah, I'm thinking. The elevator man saw him go to his room, Mr. Scott's room, at 12:25.
Okay.
Kelly also has a bullet hole in his thigh and a knife in his back.
But I also have, I don't know if this fits with that. The elevator man saw him bleeding in his thigh, but he didn't seem too badly hurt.
Okay, so.
I don't know if that goes with that.
Yeah. Okay, let's think about this. This is a lot of stuff.
You have more time? Do you have any other time?
The elevator operator reported to the police that he saw Kelly at 12:15, and he said nobody left the building from like 12:25 to 12:45.
Okay. So he
But
had
then-
to. So he had to have died inside the building.
Yeah, because
when
you said he
saw
died
him,
an hour before 1:30. So he
Yeah.
died at 12:30.
which is 5 minutes after the elevator man saw him entering.
So you said if he was died at 12, and no one left until 12:45. Right?
Yeah, between.
So then he had to have died inside the building.
Okay, so we know he died inside the building. We know he died at 12:30, which was shortly after the elevator man saw him at 12:25, right?
In Mr. Scott's room.
In Mr. Scott's room. So he died in Mr. Scott's room.
Well, I would assume if he went into Mr. Scott's room at 12:25, he died at 12:30.
Yeah, so
and he didn't see anyone come out
So
until
he died in
12:45.
Mr. Scott's room, but it's a matter of who killed him.
And was it a knife or was it a gun?
Yeah, because I also have these two tangential pieces of evidence which said that they were unable to locate Scott or Mr. Jones.
I also have the bullet taken from Mr. Kelly's thigh matched the gun owned by Mr. Jones. But that doesn't mean that Mr. Jones did it.
Yeah,
I feel like Mr. Jones I feel like these are like pointing at Mr. Jones, but I don't know.
it almost seems like Mr. Jones shot Kelly.
I have something that says Mr. Jones shot an intruder in his apartment building at 12 midnight.
But that doesn't mean that he killed him.
Yeah, that just means that he shot the intruder, which was Kelly. Okay, so then
Maybe Mr. Kelly had been going in there because he said that he destroyed his business by stealing his customers, so maybe he was breaking into the office.
so maybe he was breaking in, and then Jones shot him, and then Kelly ran away, came back, and then what was Scott's relation to
Yeah, I don't have that.
Kelly? Do we know?
I also have.
Do you know what motive Scott would have to kill Kelly?
I don't even have anything about Mr. Scott. I also have Mr. Kelly's wife disappeared after the murder.
Mr. Scott's wife?
Mr. Kelly's wife.
Mr. Kelly's wife. Okay. So she,
Do we have who his wife is?
no. So so for that, like piecing stuff together, this is like circumstantial. God. So Miss Smith was having an affair with Mr. Kelly. That much is obvious because Miss Smith often followed Mr. Kelly. Miss.
I almost feel like Mr. Kelly's wife would have a good.
Oh,
Good
hold
motive.
on. Mr. Kelly's wife left the building with Mr. Scott.
Oh.
Okay.
And she disappeared after the murder.
Yes, and Mr. Kelly's wife went to Mr. Scott's apartment at 11:30.
Ooh. And that's where Mr.
Kelly was found. So it almost seems like Mr. Kelly's wife.
has the most motive. I think that he was in Mr. Jones's office. Mr. Jones shot him, did not kill him. He went to Mr. Scott's room. The elevator man saw him. That's why there was bloodstains outside
Yeah.
the room. And then Mrs. Kelly was already in there.
Mrs.
Right?
Kelly was already in Mr. Scott's apartment, and then after the murder, Mr. Scott and Mrs. Kelly
Took
left.
the body, put it in Mr. Scott's car, and then brought it to the park. Because there's bloodstains in Mr. Scott's car. So they probably dragged it out to the car and then brought it to the park.
But was the knife found in Mrs. Smith's yard though? Had Mr. Scott's fingerprints on it.
Who's Mrs. Smith?
Miss Smith was the woman that often followed Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, but she could have planted it there.
That's true. But okay,
From what I see, it feels like I feel like his wife has the most motive besides Mr. Jones, but I don't think Mr. Jones killed him.
Mr. Jones. Okay, so we know the story we have so far is Mr. Kelly had his business corrupted by Mr. Jones.
No, Mr. Jones's business was corrupted by Mr. Kelly.
Okay.
And Mr. Jones told Mr. Kelly that he was going to kill him.
Okay. So then why would Mr. Kelly go to Mr. Jones's house to break and enter if he was the one that stole the business from Mr. Jones?
But maybe that's how he steals the business. But if Mr. Jones, we know Mr. Jones had shot Mr. Kelly, right?
Yeah.
Is that definitive?
We know that for sure. The motive for why he shot him we don't know, but we do know that it didn't kill him.
Yeah.
We do know that it didn't kill him.
It was a shot to the thigh.
It was a shot to
And
the
then
thigh.
he went to Mr. Scott's.
And then he went to Mr. Scott's. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. So he went to Mr. Jones's, got shot. We don't know why he was at Mr. Jones's, but he got shot at Mr. Jones's. He left, came back at 12:25, right? 12:25 came back.
The elevator man saw Mr. Kelly go to Mr. Scott's room at 12:25.
Okay. And then what was
Nobody left till 12:45.
Okay. So we know that he was seen at 12:25.
So we know he died in there.
We know he died in the
So we can put that
apartment.
down. If you want to write that down.
The time of the murder?
Do we know the time and the place?
We know the time is going to be 12:30 for sure because it said he died. His body was found at 1:30 and he'd been dead for an hour.
Okay.
So we know that the time of the murder was definitely 12:30 a.m.
And
The
then
place of the murder was.
Because you said if he didn't see anyone come out until 12:45, that means he had to have died in there.
So whose room did he go into?
Mr. Scott's room at 12:25.
Yeah, so Mr. Scott's room.
And now we can figure out
So
the rest of the stuff.
now we need motive, weapon.
I think the
murder.
weapon was a knife. You don't have to write that down yet, but that's
Yeah.
what I think.
No, so like the thing that I would have to say is, like there was a knife found in Mrs. Smith's yard with Mr. Scott's fingerprints on it.
Oh, Mr. Scott's fingerprints on
Mr.
it.
Scott's fingerprints on it. So he went to Mr. Scott's room, right? And Miss Smith was the one who was the assumed affair with Mr. Kelly.
Wait, so when he went he went into the room and it was Mr. Scott and Miss Kelly
And Mrs. Kelly, yeah.
in the room when he died.
In the room when he died, yes. And then
Okay.
after the murder, Mrs. Kelly and Mr. Scott were missing.
Yes.
Um,
Because Mrs. Kelly disappeared after the.
yeah.
Okay.
We know that Mrs. Kelly is often associated with Mr. Scott, so we know that they already have been doing an affair as well.
And we know that they put the body in the car, and then brought it to the park.
Okay.
Because we have the bloodstains in the car and then body in the park, so we knew that.
Okay.
But the bullet was from Mr. Jones. We know that.
Okay. So it's a matter of, do we have any evidence suggesting that there was blood found on the knife? Because
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah, like Mr. Kelly's blood was found. The knife with Mr. Kelly's blood on it was found in Miss Smith's yard.
Okay. And that
Do
same
you have any
night.
other important?
Just he has a wound in his back with the knife wound.
Okay.
Okay, so I didn't know that.
So he was stabbed with a knife, and we know that the knife that he was stabbed with had Mr. Scott's fingerprints on it. So it looks like when he got shot by Mr. Jones, he went to Mr. Scott's apartment, and
That's where his wife and Mr. Scott were.
that's where his wife and Mr. Scott were, and like we are currently assuming that there is an affair going on between Mrs. Kelly and Mr. Scott, and so they killed him so that they could like run away together. That
Yeah,
sounds
that's
like,
what it does. That's what it seems. Do you have anything else about Mr.
What-
Scott?
what-
Anything else about the weapon evidence?
what other evidence do you have? Like all of it.
Nothing much.
You have nothing about his wife, Mrs. Kelly, or
Nothing about Miss Kelly. It's just
what about Mr. Scott?
nothing about Mr. Scott.
So do you have anything about any more about the weapon or anything that might? Because I feel like we're between the two right now.
Like,
Yeah.
he could have bled to death.
Yeah, see that's so we know he's a stab wound in his back,
And a gunshot wound in
in his
his
thigh,
thigh.
and whether do we have any evidence? Do we
Well,
have any?
But we do have evidence that he wasn't badly hurt after the gunshot.
He wasn't dead.
When the elevator man saw Mr. Kelly was bleeding slightly, but he did not seem too badly hurt. And
Okay.
the elevator man had to have seen him before he went into Mr. Scott's room
Yeah.
because he went off duty.
Okay, so if he didn't seem that badly hurt, then that seems to suggest then that he didn't die from the bullet wound.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he has a stab wound in his back, and we know that the blood of him is on that knife, and we know that the knife has Mr. Scott's fingerprints on it, and we have like a legitimate reason to suggest that Mrs. Kelly and Mr. Scott were the ones that killed Mr. Kelly.
I just feel like it's too clear cut.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
To be fair, we went through some hoops to get here.
Yeah, but I mean, like the fact that the fingerprints are on the knife, like I get, there's no other way you could say there was anyone else.
Yeah. Do we have anything else about the circumstances of his death and him being dead? Like does it say like the medical examiner seems to think that he died from one thing or another, or does it just say like?
That's Mr. Jones' section. Yeah, you saw him going at 12:25, not too hurt. Yeah, all I have is the bullet matched Mr. Jones' gun
Okay, so we definitively know he got shot,
by Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones.
But that didn't, going by what I have, that didn't kill him because he did not seem
Yeah.
too badly hurt by the elevator man.
Yeah. Okay, so if he didn't get killed by Mr. Jones, then the connection between Mr. Jones and Mr. Kelly seems unclear as to why he would be at Mr. Jones's house or apartment.
That doesn't make sense. But why would he be at Mr. Scott's apartment too? after he got
Yeah, that's
shot.
that's curious for sure. Who knows? That is interesting why he would go to Mr. Scott's apartment. Because I mean, instead of assuming that they're guilty, you could also say, like, I don't know. That's pretty damning evidence, though, to see his blood on the knife and then to have his fingerprints on the knife.
Yeah, I feel like if you were like,
And like he has a stab wound in the back. Like that's pretty that's pretty definitive evidence. Of,
I feel like you
he got
can't. Yeah,
stabbed.
even if I don't know
Yeah.
how else you could look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just going from it
I
from like if
really-
you were gonna like convict someone, like I feel like if you
I
look
really
at
don't
the
know
fingerprints
how-
were on the knife, the blood was on the knife, and the stab wound was in the back,
Yeah.
and the knife was found in where was the knife found?
It was found in the Mrs. Smith's backyard, and Mrs. Smith was the one who always was with Mr. Kelly. So it looks like they tried to frame Mrs. Smith.
Yeah, because if her fingerprints weren't on the knife, you can't even
Yeah,
say that she.
but-
you have no reason to say.
But
she
it was
did.
but it was in her yard, and she was frequently seen with Mr. Kelly. So that seems to like suggest that.
Well, the blood stains were in Mr. Scott's car, so they could have driven, dropped the knife off, gone to the park, dumped the body.
I'm good with that. That seems pretty good.
So we think that Mr. Scott did it, or the wife did it. I think Mr. Scott.
I think
did
Mr.
it.
Scott did it 'cause his fingerprints. We good with
Yeah.
Mr. Scott.
And the knife.
And then what's the motive though?
Okay.
Affair.
I get because we.
I'm okay with affair. I mean that's speculative, but we could just say affair.
Yeah.
All right. Yay. All right, I think we're done.
Yay.
I didn't write time, but
Okay, let me shut the camera. Hold on.